With Batman vs Superman coming out, here's a spoiler-filled review discussion on Man of Steel. 4 years late. Hey, I wasn't on YouTube in 2012. Give me a break. Putting a percentage on a film is hard and very personal, with factors like whether you've eaten, what you knew about it going in, and what's going on in your life outside of the film as to whether that film resonates with you as much as whether the film's actually any good. But numbers do say something. It's just trying to work out what they say. Looking at the Rotten Tomatoes scores for Superman 1 and 2 and Returns of Man of Steel, I read those numbers as an indication of adult critics struggling to move forward with the times, while the positive audience reviews that would have incorporated the younger generation felt that the film was a reflection of the world they see. It's hard to do a Superman film because he's such an iconic character that's had his whole story done from birth to nonsense. They tried a return film, capitalising on the Christopher Reeves element without Christopher Reeves. The plot was a variation of the first film, land grabs with themes of moving on, love lost, and that wasn't entirely well received. So where do you go from there? You need to change direction, style, theme, vision. That is what Man of Steel is. It's not a continuation, it's a totally new and different look at the character. But there is a difference between how much you enjoyed it on the first viewing and how much you enjoyed it on subsequent viewings. And it's here that Man of Steel excels. In the first films, Krypton was seen as a cold, ice crystal environment. In Man of Steel, we're given a new world. Krypton has life, terrain. Did I enjoy it on first viewing? Not so much. Have I enjoyed it subsequently? Yeah, more. It's interesting. It's different, but in the cinema at the time, it was too dissimilar, and the whole codex issue was confusing and felt like a bit of a red herring. But when I watched Superman 1 and 2, I wasn't riveted to my seat either. True, I was 5 and 7, but starting a story that you think is based on Earth, on another planet, is always a little jarring. I like it now, but that's after multiple viewings. It's always an uphill climb to do a big proportion of the film at the beginning without the main star. And the Krypton scene is a great example of the problem that the filmmakers had. The audience is a mixed bag. The vast majority know the story, know the characters, and have had visuals from the film and TV series. If you just retell the same opening with the same issues of planet's gonna blow up, send kid off planet to Earth, that's 15 minutes that's got done before. If you add the Zod part in, that was 10 more minutes that got done at the beginning of Superman 2. That's 25 minutes of a story that we've seen and was done pretty effectively already. Audiences were already complaining of origin story fatigue with The Amazing Spider-Man the year before, so that might have played a part, but actually, with the writing schedules, it probably didn't. The original films were told in a chronological order. Telling this film in chronological order would have been dull. The flipping timelines help keep us engaged, if you know the original timeline. But if you're already confused by the codex, and next a spaceship goes flying through space to ships crashing through the waves, you might be thoroughly lost. The filmmakers had to make a choice though. They thought, if the vast majority of people know this story, we can take a lot of audience knowledge for granted. And this is the dilemma. This is not a standalone movie in a vacuum. This is a new movie, but it exists in a world where a lot of people know the history of Superman, at least from film and TV, if not the comics. And that may be its biggest problem. It's saying I'm completely new, but it's also saying you need to know the storyline already to really benefit from this style of storytelling. Batman Begins doesn't suffer from this at all because, firstly, it was all completely new. We'd never seen the story on screen. In fact, the only scene we've already seen was the parents' death scene. Knowing Tim Burton's version didn't give any advantage when watching that film, but also each flashback directly related to the scene immediately before it, whereas some of the transitions in Man of Steel just seemed a little less obvious. But they're retelling Clark's childhood from flashbacks, and I like this. We are today the net effect of our experiences from our past, and I like the scenes they chose to tell it with. The originals didn't have Clark struggling with his powers. It didn't have Clark having to wrestle with life or decisions from a very young age. The original was a description of growing up in 50s Midwest America. Wholesome, simple, running in cornfields. He enjoyed his powers, but in secret. We accept this for its simplicity, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. With his athletic ability, how would he not be on a team? We can only assume a conversation with Pa Kent, who said, "You can't play football, but why is he the football team's dog's body? That seems like torture to me." Is it to learn humility? Is this the learning ground for his Clark Kent humbleness later on? It fits with the character of the film, but it's not a realistic scenario. In Man of Steel, the bullying was apparent and obvious, and they ramped it up because bullying has become more prevalent and insidious. And it posed the questions of what you would do in a world where you were bullied but were indestructible. Would you still hurt? Is it the physical pain or the emotional pain of bullying that's so destructive? What would stop you from lashing out? And the bar scene was necessary. We need to know as the audience that it hurts him emotionally, even though he can't be hurt physically. Superman's vulnerability has always been his emotions, even more than kryptonite. Physical strength doesn't protect you from emotional pain, and the truck is visual representation of his anger that he's having to swallow. And people have complained about property damage and Superman not being that shining beacon as he was in Superman 1 and 2. But those films condensed 10 years into a 1-minute talkover. What did he eat for 10 years? There's a lot of guesswork here. Man of Steel tries to fill in those 10 years with life lessons, not an audio tape, because again, that's more relatable. Although, to be fair, what guys are running around bars pushing people, finding them totally immovable, and then carrying on that provocation as if it didn't happen? I don't know, maybe that's just me. But Superman 2 immediately shows us that as soon as Clark's powers have gone, he has no skills to deal with emotional pain and slights. He was as vulnerable emotionally as anyone. It's very easy to be manly when you're a Superman, but take those powers away, and as just a man, even with his great upbringing, he defaults to trying to solve his problems physically. The Pa Kent death scene is also used to tell a different story. In the first film, it's Clark's realizing that with all his powers, he's powerless against mortals' mortality, which is why he tries so hard to save people. It's this powerlessness that we see and experience that justifies his world-reversing idea when he loses someone he loves. The physics are nonsense, but the reasoning was set up with Pa Kent. I've always been a little bit undecided with that scene. I know visually it looks as if he's spinning the world backwards and then respins it forwards, but I've always wondered if what they were trying to get across was that when he went so fast, he went back in time like the Flash does. But how would you convey that to an audience visually in 1978? There are scenes that allude to it, like the Rock's going back up the mountain and he's looking at them reversing and he's smiling, but they added the change of direction maybe because they thought the audience might not have got the concept if the world hadn't spun backwards, but anyway, irrelevant. In Man of Steel, Pa Kent's there to explain why he's living this wanderer's life. Pa Kent's scared, and his fear for his son causes him to act illogically, causes him to take the dog himself, and actually sets Clark on a path of not being true to himself. Clark wants to help people, but believes that to honor his father's sacrifice, he's got to keep his power secret. The lessons for us is that decisions based in fear, no matter how well-intentioned, tend to be wrong. It's a DC theme. Don't fear. Audience members that have made poor decisions based in fear in their lives get that. His earthly father wanted to keep him safe at all costs. His earthly father doesn't trust humanity. His earthly father is very aware of the downsides of government, mobs, people. His earthly father is motivated by fear. His Kryptonian father is motivated by hope. And it's that search for his father, and therefore hope, and the costs of searching for hope that underpin this film. Because the reality is that the search for hope and having hope can have negative consequences. One area that I found a massive improvement on from the original films was Lois Lane. Her character in the originals is simply not believable as someone that he would fall in love with. The psychology just doesn't work. He comes from a loving family and a very loving mother figure. He's not a jock because he wasn't playing football. He's an oddball. He's had to hide his powers and lived his life as unpopular. The whole Lois Lane, aggressive reporter, not family orientated, belittling of his hometown, not interested in him at all, taking advantage of him when he's Clark but fawning all over him as Superman, is as shallow and ridiculous as you can get. She uses people. She thinks her job's more important than loved ones and shows disdain and rudeness to him. He's had that his whole life in Smallville. There's nothing attractive about that in the big city. And Margot Kidder wasn't stunning enough as an actress to offset the low character of Lois Lane and still be appealing. I just simply didn't find it credible. In The Man of Steel, they sorted that out. Lois Lane is an award-winning reporter. She can be tough when she needs to be and won't be bullied like when she's dealing with the military, but she's not a damsel in distress. More than that, she offers Clark something. Trust, belief, support. She does locate him, proving she's an excellent investigative journalist, but then she acts selflessly by putting his need for privacy over her need to get another award. She's written with high character. She doesn't even give him up when she's helped by the government. We all know how those friends bleat like sheep when they're questioned by the authorities normally, demonstrating her fortitude and moral compass. She respects the individual and is cynical of authority, making her a trustworthy friend and someone who believes in his moral standards from Smallville. That makes an authentic connection, and she's physically attractive, so then it blossoms into a love interest. She bravely agrees to go on the ship and saves him by uploading Jor-El into the ship. I know that the reasoning for her being on the ship's a little tenuous, but it's easily explained by Zod knowing that she's a bargaining piece if Kal-El doesn't give up the Codex. Also, if she knows who he is, she might well know more, and he wants to know his enemy. And is it really any more convenient than that Final Destination-like Cable crash in the helicopter in the original? The relationship is built on the fact that she stood by him and supported him, and for a man alone, that makes her his only friend. The action sequences in the film are impressive. They took the Superman 2 fight and put it on steroids. It's madly entertaining. It's a great spectacle. In fact, on first viewing, it was a little much. It's something that gets better over time. Whereas the Superman 2 fight was amazing the first time I saw it in the cinema, but now it's a little tame. Now, the destruction in Smallville and Metropolis is a big issue. Some fans were shocked and offended that Superman wasn't running around trying to save everyone, and the first two films focus on the people. But I think there are three things here. Firstly, anyone who's ever been in a fight knows when you're fighting for your life, let alone being outnumbered, you're not thinking about the environment. This isn't Jackie Chan in Rush Hour. That's comical. I enjoyed it and laughed. I'm not supposed to be laughing here though. These guys are world enders. If he's worrying about bricks and mortar, I'm thinking he's prioritizing the wrong thing. Second, his mum tells him it's only stuff. Now, if she has that world view, a lack of materialism, then that means he's not going to be as sensitive to it. And thirdly, he's in a war. His adversaries are military. The human military's involved. The Kryptonians are going to kill every single human being. Everyone. They're going to level the earth. That's why when they turned those machines on, stuff started getting sucked up and destroyed. It's like being upset with Reese for not caring about the damage to property in the Terminator. War zones aren't known as places of outstanding natural beauty. This is the inevitable price of war. Casualties. Destruction. That's why it's not a great idea in the first place. The reality is that when you go to war, things get destroyed. More than that, how do you deal with an enemy that's intent on destroying everything and everyone? This is a deeper issue, and it's one that can be explored in a film. Zod's first plan is to kill everyone, and justifies it as a means to an end so he can fulfill his genetic destiny. Then when that fails, his second plan is to kill everyone to punish Superman. There is no scenario where his plan isn't everyone dies. Either way, he can't be compromised with, and killing everyone is his first, last, and only plan. Like the Terminator. but for the world. How do you deal with that? Now, I've read and heard criticisms that Superman should have taken a fight outside of Metropolis, as in Superman 2, but the motivations are different. Zod, in Supes 2, wants to rule humans. They have to be alive to rule. He wants Superman alive and his slave. He goes to the North Pole because he wants Superman and has a bargaining chip, Lois. And actually, it's quite tenuous that Superman knows that Lex knows where he lives and will tell Zod, but he does, and so they follow him to the North Pole because they think he's weak. Zod just wants to dominate and control him. He's a megalomaniac. The Zod of Man of Steel isn't. He's the military arm genetically created to protect Krypton. Krypton's survival is his genetic drive. We've got a genetic drive to reproduce. He has a genetic drive to recreate Krypton on Earth. And when that's taken from him, he focuses his anger to rebalance that debt by taking from Kal-El. So in Man of Steel, running for the hills and hoping Zod will chase you won't work. It'd be like a millionaire driving off in his golf buggy to lure looters away from his mansion. You're getting looted, no matter what. The criticism is there that Man of Steel doesn't save many people. He actually does over the course of the movie and saves the entire planet, which is about 7.2 billion people. But facts don't change feelings, so why do people feel this way? First, the music. Hans Zimmer did a beautiful score, but it's missing one vital element. It's got this driving action beat throughout the scenes, but it doesn't have that heroic, emblematic hook.
Monsters are. I'm gonna stop you.
More important though, it doesn't have that musical transition from catastrophe to save the day. That lets us, the audience, know it's game time. Richard Donner captured the ticking clock of Jeopardy, and John Williams wrote this iconic score for it that at a primitive level makes the heart swell. It doesn't have to swell hundreds of times, just a couple of times per movie. Secondly, Richard Donner, stroke Lester, made us, the audience, honorary members of Metropolis. He shot it that way. When he's saving them, in effect, he is saving us. And that final gloat scene makes us know we're all safe. Man of Steel wants to put us, the audience, in Kal-El's shoes, and so it's shot that way. Those that empathise with the Man of Steel himself are the ones that enjoy the movie. But if you watch this and take your place again with the citizens of Metropolis, then you're going to see a number of places where you might have been killed. You don't feel safe, and you're left with that feeling like you didn't save anyone. The originals inspire hope by making us feel safe. Man of Steel inspires hope by demonstrating exceptional bravery. That bravery that he learned from Jonathan Kent, that heroism. It's the difference between parenting a baby and leading by example to parent a teenager. And again, the fact that we know so much about Superman previously reduces the impact of the bravery that he demonstrates throughout this film. Why doesn't he do all the things that we've seen him do in the other films? And the comics? Because it's his first official day on the job, and what a learning curve. In the first films, he's had a 10-year tutorial from Jor-El and turned back time before he ever faces Zod. In Man of Steel, the day before it all kicks off, it was a secret hobby, a charity fun run. And suddenly, he's in the Olympic final of the marathon, and if he comes any position other than first, an entire planet dies. Now, that's pressure, and Superman's never fought anybody. He's got great strength because he's been testing his limits, even without Jor-El telling him to. Without knowledge, he's still brave enough to try. He can hold up an ore rig, but before he held it up, he didn't know that he could. He was willing to die trying with each feat of strength. He doesn't know the limits of his strength, his abilities and powers. In that respect, he's in the same boat as humans. How many of us give up because they don't think they can do it? They don't know the limits, but they rationalize not being able to. He has no fight training other than punching immovable objects. Zod is a military leader. He's learned combat, self-defense. When up against that, what would you do? Would you rationalize that, I don't know what to do, come up with excuses, or would you just go for it? He's literally fighting for his life and massively underskilled for it. It's pure bravery. It's like a strong farmhand who's never been in a fight going up against a special ops guy. And I'd assume as well that he's never been hurt either. Who on earth's going to be able to hurt and prepare him physically? Pain is something you build a tolerance to. When did he get a chance to build it? And when he finally does have the upper hand, he's confronted by the realization in the moment that even if he beats him every single time, which is highly unlikely, Zod won't stop trying to kill humans. In Superman 2, Superman takes away Zod's powers so he's human-like and then kills him. That's a cold move. And Lois is killing people too. That's 2 murders. There's no self-defense or greater good there. They could have gone to jail. The Krypton reverser thing had already been destroyed. But the music says it's a triumph and Superman smiles, so I guess job done. In this case, Zod isn't ever going to lose his powers, and he isn't going to stop. There are 2 choices. You let people die, or you snap some necks. And that neck had to get snapped. And again, Lois is there to support him. And bar that downhill line which felt a bit forced, the relationship makes sense. A self-aware moment of, oh, ignore me, I'm high on adrenaline, or something like that would have created a small reaction and a more natural kiss, but that's minor. And Amy Adams could have crushed that, like she did that line.
Well, here is an S. How about...
But overall, the ending I like. We don't need a long sequence of his guilt. I would have been annoyed by that. He was comforted by his girl, his mum supported his decision, he believed it was the right thing to have done, he moves on. The struggle with moving on is if you believe you did the wrong thing, not when you believe you did the right thing. It's not about whether it's right or wrong, it's about what you believe. And I like the film ending at the planet.
Nice to meet you.
It doesn't bother with the ridiculous notion that she wouldn't recognize him, and again, it's a nice pun from Lois, like an in-joke between them, further cementing, but more than that, it shows that she's smart enough to handle the complexity of this situation going forward. To me, this film, at its heart, is about the confusing world of conflicting doctrines. His Kryptonian father focuses on humans as a species and the species' capacity for good. His earthly father focuses on the bad of human nature. Then there's the conflict of the genetic predetermination of Krypton and their people with the endless choices of Earth. Zod, protecting his people, conflicts with Superman, protecting his people. Zod believes he's morally right, and from his perspective, he is. Even to now, I'm not sure how that Codex thing works, but Zod believes that Kal-El killed all the Kryptonians. Why they couldn't have negotiated an agreement where they world-engined Mars and they all live there, I don't know, but that wasn't on the cards, so... And the film's not even saying that humans choose correctly and Kryptonians choose poorly. That first save scene on the oil rig, where the humans make a choice...
What about the men left inside, over?
Forget them. They're dead.
But Kal-El makes a choice to try. Choice as a concept is not inherently better. It's just as bad if you choose badly. We live in a world of contradictory information, confusing doctrines and no-win situations. This film puts a comic character that's previously been pretty black and white, right and wrong, and exposes him and the audience to the world of today. In the original, Superman has the double jeopardy choice. With equal loss of life, is keeping your word more important than protecting your loved ones? They fudge the solution so the character doesn't have to live with the consequences. He can smile at the camera, and we can leave thoroughly entertained and no wiser. Man of Steel wants to at least tackle the hard dilemmas of life and provide a more honest answer. But that complexity comes out in repeated viewings. While some questionable directing and writing means Man of Steel isn't the greatest one-hit wonder, it shows its value in the reps of rewatching. And I think that the foundation of a franchise needs to be built on a film that gets better the more you watch it. So I'd give Man of Steel, 77%. So maybe give it another look in the run-up to BVS. It'd be super if you hit the thumbs up, and if you like my vibe, please subscribe. Woo!